The fire's all around me when I was, trying to get out of here. If I would have stayed at my place like 10 minutes longer, I wouldn't be here.
I'm a walking, talking miracle that I should not have come out of that alive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Headline podcast. I'm Robin Wilhoit. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much. If you've become a regular, thank you so much, and we hope these first-timers will become regulars. So what is Behind the Headline? This is our opportunity to revisit stories that made headlines in East Tennessee, in many cases beyond East Tennessee, even across the world. And in addition to diving into the stories, we also talk to the people who brought you the stories, the reporters, the anchors, the producers, the photographers, people who asked the questions, who had to make editorial decisions for you to end up seeing that story, whether it be online or on air. So with that, let's jump into this next episode of Behind the Headline. We're going all the way back to November of 2016. And if you'll remember, during that time, East Tennessee was in the throes of a drought, significant drought, to the point that fires were popping up throughout the region. One in particular had been burning for days. We go fast forward to the Monday after Thanksgiving. That fire in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was whipped up by winds, sending embers and flames down the mountain, starting fires around that area and in Gatlinburg. As a result, people started fleeing the mountain, fleeing the town. But for one couple who was vacationing in Gatlinburg at a resort, it was hard enough just to escape an elevator, much less the flames. Here's their story.
Every year I get my calendar and say, now when am I going to Gatlinburg? So it's a pleasure.
Through the ups and downs of the year, a high point for Reba Williams is her traditional trip to Westgate Resort. The same trip she made in November 2016, when hurricane-force winds fanned ferocious flames through Gatlinburg.
Got knocked on our door and we didn't know it was an emergency. Got on the elevator, it went down half a floor and the power went out. I started calling 911 and they would say, well, we're sending somebody to get you.
After that first call at around 8 o'clock at night, Reba and her husband waited and waited, called 911 a few more times, but nobody showed up.
The roads were blocked. About 3:30, we saw a red glow at the bottom of the elevator. We're not going to make it out. So then I tried 911 one more time.
911, where's your emergency?
The elevator's on fire. We're burning.
Where are you, ma'am?
Please send help.
Where are you, ma'am?
Westgate Resort.
He said, get to the lowest point in the elevator.
You gotta go that way.
The lowest point for the dispatcher was when he learned crews had tried and failed to reach them through a tangle of burning trees and power lines for 8 hours.
Reba, how long have y'all been in the elevator? You just got in it right before you called?
Since 8 p.m.
You've been in the elevator since 8 p.m.?
Yes.
They're getting closer, Reba. I'm still here with you, okay?
Of course, he kept saying somebody's coming, but I thought, it's like you tell your children it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, and when it's really not.
Just pray. Pray.
They're on their way as fast as they can get there, okay?
With the fiery hell creeping up from below, Reba and her husband made plans for above.
We said our goodbyes to each other and said, see you in heaven. We knew that was the end. I passed out. I saw Jesus in the white light. And about that time, I heard somebody say, ma'am, you've got to stand up.
Fire crews pried the elevator open, rescued her husband, and carried an unconscious Reba down 3 flights of fiery stairs.
We have located and rescued both people in the elevator. EMS is on the scene.
And the next thing I remember, I was in the ambulance to Knoxville, to the trauma unit.
Williams and her husband recovered from burns and smoke inhalation. After the fire, the only thing left standing of the building where she was trapped was the elevator shaft. And they're forever grateful to the rescue workers and the Westgate staff who took care of them.
You know, it's people and relationships that count.
And they'll keep coming back to Gatlinburg, because after a night when they would not go down, the highs of the Smokies feel even closer to heaven.
I'm a walking, talking miracle that I should not have come out of that alive. But I did.
With reporter Madison Stacy in Gatlinburg, Jim Matheny, WBIR 10 News.
On the night of November 28th, as things were escalating, our crews were on the ground trying their best to cover this story. WBIR reporter anchor at the time, Leslie Ackerson, and Tim Dale, our WBIR photographer extraordinaire, to this day, both of you, number one, thanks for being here. I'm so happy to see you. I know, but let's take you back to that night. Where were you as things were starting to play out? You were together working as a team, correct?
No.
You weren't? Okay, well, let's fill us in.
I went down in the early afternoon and was doing live shots with Rashad.
Who was another reporter
Who was
at the
another
time.
reporter. And so he was covering the fact that the school was closing and there was all the smoke. And our news director at the time, after I finished those live shots, she's like, just hang in town, and then if anything happens, go get some dinner and then meet up with Leslie. And it's because Leslie was were you working nightside?
I was part of the nightside team, so coming in around 2 o'clock, and I think they had just issued a voluntary evacuation of the Minot Park neighborhood. And so I went out there to see if I could interview some families who were deciding to leave, who weren't going to leave. I talked to this woman who was going to stay behind with her family heirloom piano, some families who were packing up. I even remember going to the Pittman Center where they had opened up an evacuation shelter and it was empty. Like there was no one there yet because it was 2 or 3 o'clock, but it was just super windy, super smoky. And then we met up later in the evening as things it just changed so quickly from 2 to 5, 2 to 6.
Well, at 4 o'clock they had a press conference with the Gatlinburg Fire Department, and I remember the Gatlinburg Fire Department, they were discussing about how fast it was moving, and they thought it would be like 12 hours before it reached Gatlinburg. And so I covered that press conference, went and did the live shots. And then once those live shots were done, I went to go get some food. So I drove through Gatlinburg trying to find a restaurant that was open, and nothing was open. I'm like, there's one more restaurant at the end of time and I'm gonna check that. And so I was like driving, it was so smoky and so dark that I went right past it, didn't see it, until I saw Welcome to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I'm like, this is not where I want to be because I know the fire's up there. So I don't want to be in the park. So then that's why I turned around and came back, and I was headed back and like, okay, I'll just go to Pigeon Forge. When I got to the end of town, end of Gatlinburg, there was a lot of traffic. That's where they were starting to evacuate at Kings Branch Road. The Park Service was there on the spur. They were evacuating people up Kings Branch, and I'm like, why are they sending them that way? Because there's no way to get out from up there. And then they ended up all coming back down. So I started shooting. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, if it's an accident up there, if something's happened, so I'm just gonna get some video. So I was shooting some video.
And what were you shooting? What
I
were
was
some
just
of the
shooting the
things?
Park Service,
Okay.
directing people, cars leaving, and then, remember, it was super windy, and at one point...
And smoky.
Smoky. The wind blew my hat off, and I turned to go grab it, and I went over, picked it up. Well, then that same gust of wind had knocked over my camera. And our cameras, it's a camera, and then it has a viewfinder, and it broke off that viewfinder. And that's how you turn the camera on and off. And so now I had a camera that worked, but I couldn't see what I was shooting. So I was driving and realizing this is the biggest story of my life, and I broke my camera about 4 minutes into it. So
Okay.
I headed
Pivot.
in. I tried to go in. So I eventually got my camera together. I went to go to Pigeon Forge, so I got in the line of people evacuating. They evacuated us out through the ingress, into Gatlinburg. We were on that side of the road going out, and they were just saying, stay on the right side because there's still cars coming in. And as we went back, I could start seeing that's where the fire was starting to come down. It was coming down the mountain, had hit the creek and was crossing the creek. And we were right before Pigeon Forge, and we're at stopped traffic, and all of a sudden I heard a crack, and I see a tree fall, not on the car directly in front of me, but on the back of the car in front of him, smash the trunk, the taillights, and then hit the road. And so they all just take off, like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. And they ran. And now there's this tree across the road, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? And the guy in front of me is sitting there, and nobody's moving. So I'm like, get out of my car, and I'm like, hey, can you help me move the tree? So we picked
And there's the wind, I guess.
Yeah,
the
wind blew, it
Yeah.
just snapped a tree. And so we picked up branches, and then a bunch of guys, my enduring memory of that night was looking back in the headlights and seeing guys just boiling out of their cars and coming to help move stuff. And so we picked up this, we had like 8 guys pick up this tree, and we threw it off and we cleared it out, and I'm like, all right, let's get out of here. That's how we do things in Tennessee, boys. And they're like, yeah, let's get the hell out of here. So we all got in our cars and we left, and now I'm trying to get back to Leslie. Okay. She's in Gatlinburg. I don't know where. I think I called you at that point.
Yeah, and I think went back for another press conference at the fire department, the Gatlinburg Fire Department, because they were starting to do more, not voluntary, but like evacuations. We'd had, okay, we're voluntary, then they were evacuating for that 4 o'clock press conference, and it was like, no, we need everybody out. And I think we tried to meet up, and I remember the wind trying to open my car door, and it was so hard to get the car door open and wedged in to get my stuff out without the wind breaking it. And you and I tried to go live so we could talk about the evacuations. We weren't able to connect. Tim's using my camera, which he's never used before because his was broken.
That was like the first night you had grabbed it.
It was
too.
the first night. It was a new camera, and I thought, oh, I'll try this out.
So, biggest star of the year, my camera that I'm used to is broken, and your camera is like brand new, and like, how do I turn it on?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is an element of this. So you're trying to cover this huge story, which we didn't know how huge, but we knew is definitely intensifying. And there's another stress, the equipment that you need to tell the story. I don't think people can appreciate that added layer of stress.
I think there was a lot of frustrations in the aftermath for me because we were not able to go live with the way that works. Obviously, you can't bring a live truck out there and put up a satellite. If people's in a live truck, and then our units weren't working.
And the cell phones.
Because I was going to say the cell phones, like around 9, the cell phones were all knocked out. So we had no communication stations. Channel 8 had their sat truck there, but you have to call back to the station so the anchors can hear the reporters. You have to call back so you can talk to cell. He couldn't do a sat shot. We couldn't do our backpack shot because it relies upon cell technology. So we were just like kind of in our bubble without a way to communicate.
So how do you weigh, I've got a story that I've got to cover, and there is danger all around me. The urge to cover the story, but then factor in your safety at the same time. I mean, were there elements of I need to worry about myself and the story can kind of wait, or how did you manage that?
Part of it was, we needed to get the story out.
Right.
So we made the decision, all right, we're gonna head to Sevierville along the back way to Sevierville to try to get to cell service so we can set up a backpack. And I remember no cell service, and the first time we got cell service, also my phone went ding, 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 ding. I had 20 texts. Where are you? What's happening? What's going on?
There was fear.
There
back
was fear.
At the news.
We had not been in communication at all. And they're like, what, are you guys going live? So we pulled over to the side of the road, tried to go live there, couldn't get a signal there, and they said, go to Rocky Top Sports World.
And I did a phoner with John Becker, basically, because once we got service, I'm like, just put you where you can hear me talking, and I'm like reading off the evacuations. This is what they're telling us. People need to get out. This is what I'm seeing, but we weren't really able to provide a visual. I don't think I felt scared. I think you're kind of in this numb adrenaline as, yeah, we need to get this story out. We need to tell people what's happening so they can get safe. Until Tim and I went into a neighborhood and he got out of the car to shoot some video, and it was literally like if you looked down the street of the neighborhood, house on fire, house on fire, house on fire, fire down here, and you could hear all of the fire alarms going off, just this like
the
beep.
bank alarms. So it was like just.
Was it surreal? It had to be surreal.
And Tim got out of the car to shoot video, and I think that was the one moment that I got really fearful of, like, what if I get trapped in this neighborhood? What if a tree falls? And I start, yelling at Tim, like, okay, that's enough video. Let's get back in the car. Let's get back in the car.
No, it's not. Like, this is huge. And people say they're like, I was scared for my life. There was never a point where I was fearful for my life. I, with the wind, you don't know. Mm-hmm. But by this, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, so we'd been live all evening through 11 till about 1 o'clock in the morning at Rock Top Sports World, just talking to Survivor,
That's right.
talking to evacuees. And then we had to, because the roads were all blocked off, so we had to wiggle our way back into town. And, you can see these fires, but they aren't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. I never felt like we put ourselves in any danger.
I don't think people appreciate, too, when you're working as a team, there is a lot of coordination between the two, and clearly in situations like this, you needed to articulate how you were feeling. You needed to articulate how you were dealing with it and feeling with it. How did that communication work? Was there simpatico, or was there a little frustration and, okay, no, we need to leave now, or how did that play out?
I think it was a good tension of, I wanted to stay and shoot. She was like, we need to go, so I respect that. And when I'm shooting in a dangerous situation, I want somebody to be looking out for me. And Leslie was looking out for me. So when she says we got to go, okay, we got to go. I was trying to figure out, so we have this new camera with no tripod. My tripod doesn't work. I'm balancing on things. We're just trying to shoot everything. So I didn't feel like I got very much of what I wanted at all. But she was like, we need to go. I'm like, okay, all right. I respect her enough to know if she's saying we got to go, we got to go.
Okay, so you spend that night. When do you finally get back to the station?
Well, the first thing we did, that's when we drove and we decided to do some driving with her shooting out the window.
Yeah.
Okay, what was that like?
Yeah, I was just driving and...
I think we got a clearer picture because the sun was starting to come up then. Was that when it was when we could see the restaurants? I'm thinking about driving down the Gatlinburg
when we drove,
where the fire station was.
I don't remember.
I feel like we could see a little better than we had.
Well, I think we could see, but it was because everything was on fire. The thing I remember is where the trolleys are, the Gatlinburg trolleys, and those buildings were on fire, and this restaurant is fire. So
maybe we could see because it was, like you said, on fire, but I feel like we could just see a lot better than we had been able to see hours before.
Needless to say, it was a long night,
Yeah.
very long night, but it did not end there. You guys, were you in the trenches throughout the week? Because we did spend a whole week, if not more, of course, covering this story, but deep into it. It didn't just end that night. How do you get up the next day and say, okay, I've got to go back and cover this, what we then realized was an utter travesty?
I think you're tired, but you just keep going. And I think there were still people missing. There was so much unknown. There was a lot of fear. And I think your job is to help calm fear, help to put out the facts of what has actually happened and happening, show people where to get resources, and then of course to bring hope, because there's so many encouraging stories and families that we met and have followed through the years that had a really horrific night, but we're still continuing to bring hope and try to help people kind of recover from that emotionally.
Yeah,
I think you have that weight on you of, we need to help the world see that.
The world needs it, but as journalists, do you need it?
Yeah. I mean, it's encouraging when you're going into a place that's just devastated and you're seeing people bring in tractor trailer loads of water, food, toys for kids, because remember, this is November, this is around Christmas. So people are sending so many gifts for kids, and just like, what can we do to help? And just, it was like over and beyond anything. And that was the encouraging part for me, seeing not only East Tennessee respond, but Tennessee, the United States, the world respond to what happened in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think that this is a question I ask my guests at every podcast, and it's the final question I ask is, and this is for both of you, how does this story exemplify the responsibility and the power of local journalism?
I think we were there on the ground. Without local journalism, you don't have those stories, you don't have those images, you don't have that sound of what it's like to be in Gatlinburg the night of the Gatlinburg fire.
I think we give you a picture of it up close and could show you the facts again and show you the hope, like I said, and then the connections we make, we followed through, and so you can see how the rebuild goes, the story goes. And I think it's much more than this happened one time, let's move on. I think by having us there, you know, boots on the ground, and be able to carry the story forward, it just gives people a closer picture into what really happened and the true emotions of the people that were affected by it.
Absolutely. Leslie, Tim, thank you for your perspective and your memories. We appreciate you very much. When the fire was finally extinguished, more than 2,000 homes, buildings, businesses were either damaged or destroyed, and 14 people were killed. They were moms, dads, sons, daughters, and a beloved minister.
The heartbreak of the Gatlinburg wildfires can be summed up in the faces of the fallen. Yesterday, we learned the tragic fate of Michael Reed's family. His wife, Constance, was found alongside their daughters, 12-year-old Chloe and 9-year-old Lily. We also learned about Brad Phillips. He was a retiree after working with the federal government for several years. He and his wife just finished the renovation on their house less than a month ago. His wife was visiting in Florida when the fire started. Sevier County suffered a big loss as news of the death of Reverend Dr. Ed Taylor spread. His son Eddie told us officials believe he died of smoke inhalation. Reverend Taylor pioneered the wedding industry in Gatlinburg and presided over 70,000 weddings. 75-year-old Mae Vance, a grandmother who filled her time with family, animals, and gardening. Vance leaves behind her husband of 53 years, their 2 sons, and grandchildren. 70-year-old Alice Hagler moved to Gatlinburg with her son. Until recently, she had been an employee at the incredible Christmas place in Pigeon Forge. Her coworkers say Alice was soft-spoken but very friendly and loved to visit with guests. Canadian couple John and Marilyn Tiegler, both in their 70s, had just celebrated Thanksgiving with their daughter at their Gatlinburg vacation home. They were killed along with their dog when they tried to escape the flames Monday night. The pair would have celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary this year. The Summers family had come to Gatlinburg from Memphis for a birthday celebration. The family became separated when trying to flee on foot. John and Janet Summers, both 61, died. Their sons, Branson and twin brothers Jared and Wesley, were taken to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Jared was released from the hospital on Thursday.
He said my mother and father, they were absolutely happy. They were the first time they'd been with the family on a vacation in 4 years or so because of work and all these other issues.
WBIR anchor John Becker, my colleague, was in the anchor chair that night of November 28th. I'm glad you're in the chair today.
It's good to be in the chair today.
Yes, it is good to be in the chair today. So we can reflect. You can reflect on that night and the chaos that was playing out. Typically, I would have been next to him in that chair, but that night, I was off. That day I was off. So it was pretty much you manning the controls and the anchor desk. So let's flash back. What do you remember about that night and how it was playing out?
What I remember is the lack of communication. You heard from Leslie and Tim talk about how they were trying to reach us. We were trying to reach them and just kind of get a sense of what was going on. Beth Haynes, our former colleague, was in the newsroom. She was going to anchor the 10 o'clock. She needed to know some information, and all of us were trying to piece it together at 7 to 8 o'clock because we'd done live shots that they talked about at 6 and got a little sense of all the smoke. And what I remember after the smoke is a few hours later, the story became the fire and how fast the fire was moving. And what I was working with Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell on, and so was Beth, is we could not believe the distance between the chimney tops and Gatlinburg as the crow flies is about 6 miles. And we were trying to comprehend how fast that fire was moving from one place in that 6 miles, which is extraordinarily fast. It took me back to the days of covering wildfires out west.
That's right, because you were in Portland, Oregon for a long time prior to being here.
And covered a lot of wildfires. And what I learned about in those forests is you get crown fires in winds. And what that means is the trees are, the top of the tree is the crown of the tree, and the fire will hit here and then hop to the nearby tree and then hop to a nearby tree.
So the fire is above you.
It's above you. It's not burning the entire tree. It's hopping from treetop to treetop and can go at the pace of a galloping horse. And that's what fire bosses back west would talk about. When the winds pick up and you have a severely dry forest, that can happen. And that's what was happening that night. And it helped me, that reporting helped me kind of grasp, oh, this is how this wildfire is moving so quickly, because we've got winds 60, 70 mile an hour gusts pushing this thing down the valley right into that mountain town. And one thing I think people should understand is Gatlinburg is truly the gateway to the Smokies. More than 10 to 13 million people go through there every year to go see the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but only 3,500 people live there full time. So we had a lot of tourists in town, but then in terms of locals, and I know we'll talk about this, this was their town that was under threat.
Absolutely it was. So this is playing out. You are at the desk trying to share this information. How do you keep your calm as you're delivering this information when you know there is chaos brewing out there?
Just to pull back the curtain, and Robin, you and I talk about this with our team all the time, we need to overreact in the newsroom and underreact on the air, because our role is not to create panic, it's just to get the facts out and the information out. And so we had a lot of people working on just determining who was evacuating and why they were evacuating and where they were behind the scenes, and we would come on the air and try to do our best to calmly relay that information to ensure that people had a safe place to go. One of the ways we did that was, you heard from Tim and Leslie talk about the cell phones were down, but the hard line still worked. And so we were calling people we knew we could reach. And one of them in particular was Ryan Desir at the Ripley's Aquarium. And I just have this flashbulb memory of talking to him about his concerns as he locked up Ripley's Aquarium and all these animals that they have in there, and what would happen to them overnight because they could see the flames coming.
Yeah, and those stories, they still trigger and resonate.
They
So that night, it is, we know what we know. By the next day, we know even more. I mean, homes have been destroyed, buildings destroyed, lives lost. And thus it begins. We are spending the next many days focused on this one story. So it didn't end that night for you. It stretched on. Kind of share what your life looked like that week covering this story.
Yes, it changes your entire day, because normally you and I, working the evening shift, would come in at 2:30, and then we work, and then we'd have a dinner break, and then get back on the air for the late newscast. Everything shifted because we were having afternoon press conferences, and you and I had to go up to the site daily. The fortunate thing was, a lot of times in these stories, you just have to camp out and sleep wherever you can sleep. In this case, we had a through route home. You and I could come and go. So I was fortunate to have that, as were you. But just going there and being at many of the press conferences to learn the bits and pieces of information about when people might be allowed back in, learning what people had experienced. We were on the phone that night just carrying into the next day with people who were trapped in hotels. that was a lot of people who were just trying to figure out how to get out and get home. So that was a piece of the story. I remember helicopters landing with the governor and the head of the Tennessee National Guard to brief us on how they were working to help people and put out fires, and saved a lot of people when the fires were raging the next day, just to keep the fire away from homes.
So we spend the next week or more, definitely more, telling these stories. And as we're telling the stories, we are always going to base it on fact. What we hear from the officials, what we hear, what we confirm. But in the midst of gathering these facts, if you will, there was a lot of misinformation out there swirling. Talk about that in the process of how do you weed out what's real and what's not, what's fact and what's fiction.
One of the things we know as veteran journalists is first reports are always wrong. That's sort of just ingrained in our brains. No matter what the breaking news situation is, you just need to take those first reports with a little bit of a grain of salt and make sure that you drill down on the number who are dead, the number who are missing. We'll see that in disaster after disaster, where the missing list is in the hundreds, and then it dwindles down into the single digits. But at first, it seems like it may be even more of a incredible disaster, and then you keep reporting, and you learn the facts. And we had to do that in this case, as you know, Robin, because people were saying there are bodies stacked up in refrigerator trucks that the government won't show us. That was a popular misconception that was out there and gaining traction on the internet, and it wasn't true. But we needed to run that down day in, day out, to keep repeating what we knew and what we were seeing.
Let's talk about you, the journalist now. Not the journalist, no, John Becker, JB as we call him. Putting the professional aside, how did you personally navigate all that you were hearing, all that you were seeing, fact, fiction? How were you able to process it as a human being?
It's an overwhelming story, and I think when you're in it, it's really hard to do that. It's almost like you hear first responders and other people. It doesn't matter who you are under a stressful situation. Maybe you've lost a loved one, and you look back and you're like, wow, I don't know how I really did that, because that seems pretty overwhelming. That's the way I feel like when I look back at a big major story, especially this one, where it's really a one foot in front of the other kind of day. And the only thing you can do is what you can do that day. And I think it's not until later that you step back and sort of take a breath and look at the impact on your emotions and the people that you talk to, and maybe that hits you later down the trail when you're talking to somebody else on a different story. I think that's part of the post-traumatic stress that comes with our jobs, of seeing people on their worst days and also seeing people on their best days.
Absolutely. Well, as you well know, this story is not over. There's still some lawsuits out there, and people will forever deal with the trauma in which this put on their lives. But 7 years after the fire, a memorial was built in Gatlinburg to honor those 14 lives lost, as well as the first responders, the emergency crews that were so heroic that night and the days thereafter. Our cameras were there that day. The memorial was dedicated, where people remembered and they reflected.
14 names engraved in stone, each carrying a life's worth of meaning.
We certainly mourn with those that did, and the lives that were lost, and it's been a tough 6.5 years.
People from across the country are here for this historic moment to mourn the lives lost, and most importantly, remember those who died.
We fled for our lives that night. It was a night that we don't want to remember.
A community brought together by tragedy.
This has brought back a lot of memories, and of course we live it every day. We see where the fires were, and everything burned around our house, and all the houses around us. And it's just been it's been a tough thing, but we're so happy to have the memorial and especially to pay tribute to the lives of the people that we lost.
A community that's mountain strong. For victims like Ben Stroop, today's ceremony is incredibly hard to see in person.
Just the fires all around me when I was, trying to get out of here. If I would have stayed at my place like 10 minutes longer, I wouldn't be here.
There was no home to return to after that fateful day.
Guitars, my place, recording studio, 1,300 original songs I had, all gone.
The local musician not only lost all his possessions, but his life's work. But it's given him time to write a new song.
Tell you a line, 5 months, no rain, winds were stronger than a hurricane. It's tough to finish.
That's because he says he's still living it. But he, like many others impacted by this fire, are finding things to be thankful for.
It's pretty crazy. But again, I'm very lucky compared to, some people lost loved ones.
So when are these going to...
That memorial stands as a lasting tribute to people who lost so much in the wildfires. Also, that is lasting is the video, the pictures from that horrific night. And that leads me to the next topic, and that is editorial decisions that we had to make as a newsroom when it comes to video of what should we show, what should we not show. Walk us through how we made those decisions, because I remember that clearly. It was a discussion.
And it's a discussion in any story like this that has a traumatic video. We had some in particular from some brothers who were escaping down those mountain roads with fire on either side of them, and just seeing it was stressful for anybody. But seeing it over and over and over, we had to talk about whether that was good for people or really illustrated the story. And so what I think we really drill down on is, if you're going to use video like that, it needs to be specific. It has to, what's the motivation for that, and it needs to have purpose. And if it doesn't, we shouldn't use it, because it can be triggering to people and also misleading about what that looks like today. So I think we had those discussions in the newsroom among, anchors, reporters, photojournalists, producers. What is the appropriate use of that video going forward? That's a good example, because we have those good discussions going on today as well.
We do, and that's part of the editorial process, having those discussions, talking through things. There is a method to our madness. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Another thing that we definitely feel we have to do in our work is as Leslie and Tim were talking about, we do have to provide hope. We do have to share those stories of resilience. It's essential to what we do, wouldn't you agree?
It absolutely is, and one of the things that played out in my mind always are the helicopter rescue crews with the Tennessee Army National Guard, the 1st of the 230th, who were using Black Hawk helicopters to put out fires. I mentioned it a little bit before, but I got to go up a year after the fires with them, some of the crews who were there, and fly the same routes that they flew. And you could see the burn scars of the fire. So as I talked about earlier, where this fire ran down the mountain, it was clearly visible. Green on either side, and then this big brown patch leading you to the community of Gatlinburg. But they would fly over individual houses and say, see that house? We saved that house. Just with bucket drops. And they were, I remember them talking about, and this was throughout 2016, because you said at the top of this podcast, we were so dry. These guys have been flying fires everywhere, and landowners would say, come use my pond to scoop up, because they could see them with the Bambi buckets, to drop down, scoop up water, and then go put out a fire. And that they did that on golf courses near Gatlinburg. Anywhere they could find deep water, they would use it. But also people welcoming. This is going to help my neighbors? 100% do it. And it was those stories that hit me really hard as well.
As reporters, we always have those stories that we cover so many, but there are those a handful of stories that are the stories. Where does this fall? Where do the Gatlinburg wildfires fall for you?
It is, like you said, Robin, it's not over, because I think about it a lot when I drive through there and how much building is still going on there, and the worry that another dry summer could lead into another fall, because buildings are built so close together. And I always ask myself, what did we learn from this? And in some ways, I'm not sure we learned enough based on the actions that I'm seeing now, because it's a beautiful spot. People love to visit there. They have a lot better alert system, but the building is so intense and so close. You just it's triggering.
I was going to say, is it almost like PTSD
yes,
to a degree?
100%. Yeah. So that's with me. But you asked how it ranks. It ranks incredibly high because you and I have shared a number of big stories together. You've talked about on this podcast. The Christian Newsom story just impacted our community and so deeply, and so did this. It was just it's very high. I don't know how to say where it ranks, but it's
up there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Final question. How does this story, covering this story, which does continue, exemplify the responsibility and the power of local journalism?
I think we, and Leslie and Tim touched on this a little bit, but we live in this community, and these are our neighbors. And other places will parachute in and cover a story for the moment that it's happening and then leave. And our responsibility is to cover the moment it happens and then what happens after that. And I think that is what local journalism does so well, and is so valuable in why we exist, is telling that first draft of history and then continuing the story to show how it's impacted lives. We have done that, I think, incredibly well on this story, showing not just on the dates that mark when the fire started, but also just following people through their lives. I think it's a privilege to do it.
It is an absolute privilege and honor. I know we both feel strongly and passionately about that. Well, thank you for taking us back to 2016, the wildfires in Gatlinburg. And thank you so much for going behind the headline with us. We hope to see you the next time on Behind the Headline.